Is Madagascar here?
Oui,
Malawi?
on est présent, bonjour.
Yes, Madagascar is present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madagascar.
Merci.
Do we have Malawi? Is Malawi in the house? Mauritius? Mauritius? Do we have Namibia? Do we have Namibia? Oh, I forgot Mozambique. Do you have Mozambique? Seychelles? I saw South Africa is here.
South Africa present.
Thank you very much. Tanzania? Zambia? Zimbabwe?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Zimbabwe is present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zimbabwe. It looks like we have fewer countries that are already represented. And the time is now 2 minutes past 10. Madam Musonda? Can I be guided, seeing that do we wait some more minutes before we kick off, or we can kick off and everyone else will find us on the way?
I think that we can start, Mr. Modise. We have enough members, I think, present. We can begin. The others can join us, because if we take too long, it's not fair on those who are already
on the platform. No, thank you very much. Good morning once again, honorable members and distinguished guests who are participating in the session today. The meeting today is a consultation meeting on the SADC model law on public financial management. The consultation today is with different members of the revenue services in the SADC region. We are going to conduct the session
recording
today
in progress
on the three SADC PF languages, which is your English, French, and Portuguese. If you have not done so already, could you kindly go to the bottom of your screen? There's an interpretation icon there. Choose the language of your choice between English, Portuguese, and French. Those are the languages that we're going to use to conduct the session today. Honorable members are please kindly requested to most of the time keep their videos on, especially when you take onto the platform, because the sessions today are going to be broadcast live on various social media platforms and will be also recorded for later broadcast on channel 408. We request honorable members to please ensure that their videos are properly framed. By properly framed, I mean that you have to make sure that there's space around you and there's also space above your head so that we can see you. Don't lean too close into the microphone, into the screen like that. It sort of makes it difficult for you, for people to be who are watching to view you. So ensure that there's enough space on both sides of your thing, of your face, to ensure that we've got space to include the various channel logos that go on these areas of the site and the various messaging that goes there, and also ensure that there's enough space for you on this part so that your name on the channel is going to be appearing here. Now, if you are leaning too close, it means that your name is going to be on your face somewhere. So we request that you move your camera a little bit forward, either like this or push the screen back, but just make sure that there's enough space for your head and shoulders to appear on the screen to make it proper for television and broadcasting. Please be reminded that because we are broadcasting live on social media, which is YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, it means that these videos are going to be having a longer shelf life on social media, and they'll be accessible for years and years to come. You'll be using them as a reference point of your participation in this session. Without wasting any time, I'm now going to hand over to our facilitator for today. The facilitator is Ms. Caroline Kam Walker, who is an international development and policy and advocacy expert. In the last 20 years, she has lent her expertise to position and promote policy and funding that advance development in Africa. Her vocation has enabled her to work closely with duty bearers in over 40 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, across Europe and parts of Asia. Ms. Kam Walker is a trustee and founding director of African Renaissance, a charitable trust that works to advance gender justice and health equity across Africa. She holds a Master's of Arts degree in Political Science and International Relations and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Anthropology. Ms. Kam Walker is also a member of the technical working group convened by the SADC Parliamentary Forum to provide technical support and backstopping for the process of developing this SADC model law that we're dealing with. Madam Kam Walker, over to you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. My sincere appreciation. It gives me a great pleasure and honor to be your facilitator this morning. I take this opportunity to welcome all the distinguished delegates who are in attendance. We have today among us the revenue authorities of all the SADC, representing the SADC member states. And as we kick off this discussion, I take it that we have confirmed who is in the room. And with your guidance, Madam Claire, allow me to proceed. And really, in addition to extending my very, very warm welcome request, sorry, I think someone has not muted. We kindly request you to adhere to the guidelines from our media team. But without much ado, please allow me to really take this opportunity to invite Madam Boemo Sekoma, the Secretary General of SADC Parliamentary Forum, to make her welcome address. Over to you, Madam SG.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies, Ms. Caroline Kam Walker. Our keynote speaker, Her Excellency, Ms. Paulina Mbala Elago, my sister, the Executive Secretary of Southern Africa Customs Union, distinguished commissioners and officials from the revenue authorities of SADC member states, members of the Technical Working Group on Public Financial Management, Mr. Daniel Grimbeck, the legal drafter for the SADC Model Law on Public Financial Management, SADC citizens following proceedings virtually on various social media platforms, staff of parliaments and the SADC Parliamentary Forum, members of the media, distinguished participants. It is with immense pleasure that I welcome you all to this event, which is held on the sidelines of the development of the Public Financial Management Model Law. It is not often that we interact with representatives of revenue authorities of SADC member parliaments or member states. Hence, I will say a few words about the SADC Parliamentary Forum before proceeding with the rationale of our engagement today. Distinguished participants, as you may be aware, the SADC Parliamentary Forum is an institution of SADC representing its parliamentary arm at the regional level. The forum regroups 15 member parliaments of the SADC region. The 16th member parliament, being the Comoros, is yet to join this particular grouping. And its overarching objective is to promote interparliamentary cooperation and diplomacy through targeted initiatives in view of heightening socio-economic development and democratization in Southern Africa. Public financial management forms part of the endeavor of the forum to promote prudential financial planning, which is a strategic objective under its strategic plan of 2019 to 2023. One of the key initiatives of the SADC Parliamentary Forum is to develop model laws, which act as normative standards that serve as a guiding legislative benchmark for national parliaments. The development of model laws is a testament to the forum's belief in the rule of law and is paramount to spearhead the domestication of international best practices. Hence, the rationale behind the development of the SADC model law on public financial management. Distinguished participants, the forum has consulted with a series of stakeholders so far, and this meeting with revenue authorities is crucial to add knowledge and value to the consultative process. Thus, thank you for participating and taking the time to interact at this session. Distinguished colleagues and participants, you'll surely concur that revenue of the state is linked with the way public finances are being managed. Without public financial management, revenue sources may be reduced or simply dry out. It was thus significant for the forum to consult with representatives of revenue authorities, since you are on the front line of the revenue collection process and act as guardians to states' coffers. In addition, the world is shifting from the notion of revenue authorities being merely a traditional collecting agency to being an active advisory unit on policy, including revenue administration, money laundering, and the financing of terrorism. Revenue authorities thus have a huge portfolio of tasks, which have inroads and linkages with the public financial management framework of the state. Revenue authorities, colleagues, are also recognized as investigatory units, which witness the flows of money and are thus well placed to report suspicious transactions, which may be harmful to the public financial management framework of our member states. Through your reporting lines, you also advise the Ministries of Finance and Economic Development, which formulate policies on public financial management from the executive perspective. Today, dear colleagues, you are thus considered as an essential part of the public financial management framework, and your views on the model law will be highly valued and regarded. During the consultative session, we expect that you engage openly and frankly with our legal drafter and the rapporteurs and address issues of the model law which relate to flows of money, especially from a revenue standpoint. You may, for instance, consider the provisions governing cryptocurrencies under Part 12 and brainstorm about the ways in which revenue will be collected on same. Or consider issues relating to maladministration under Part 11. As revenue administrators, you may also consider the propriety of Part 10 relating to public accounts and how public accounts should be reported. It is well understood that different revenue authorities across SADC have different powers and functions, and thus you may identify different areas of the model law to engage upon. Dear colleagues, before I end, I wish to state that the forum will continue to engage on revenue collection beyond the ambit of this consultative process. Indeed, it is expected that revenue authorities will play a crucial role in domestication of the model law by exposing instances of financial maladministration and irregularities in cash flows, which the model law attempts to eliminate. Furthermore, there will be ongoing collaborative opportunities for revenue authorities to engage with the dedicated organ of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, notably the Regional Parliamentary Model Law Oversight Committee, to report on the extent of the domestication process in each member state in the coming years. Dear colleagues, as we start the consultative session, we should not lose sight of the fact that for most SADC member states, revenue collection constitutes the main source of income of the country. It is with these public monies which are deposited into consolidated funds that all expenditures relating to the state are made. And expenditures in turn entail the management thereof by a robust public financial management. Without proper revenue collection, the public financial management framework would thus be non-existent. At the same time, the public financial management also means collecting revenue properly and appropriately accounting for same with the necessary checks and balances. Your contributions today will thus go a long way ahead in finalizing the model law and clearing the path to advocate for public financial management reforms in Southern Africa. On this hopeful note, I wish you all a pleasant session and fruitful deliberations. I thank you, Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you very much, Madam SG, for that wonderful, inspiring, and hopeful address. Dear delegates, distinguished participants in this meeting, allow me to take a minute or so to just share that Madam SG has really emphasized on the important role that revenue authorities have to play when we think of this as the basis upon which all expenditures in our countries are really dependent. As gatekeepers, as those who lead the assessment, collection, and accounting of these revenues, we therefore, look forward to hearing your opinion, your comments as we engage in this very participatory session. And really, at this very early point, I wish to invite you to be very attentive as we will now, shortly be moving to listen to the keynote address and thereafter to the main content that has had us here together. At this juncture, allow me to really invite our keynote speaker for today, Ms. Paulina Mbala Elago, who is the Executive Secretary of the Southern African Customs Union. Ms. Paulina is a trade economist. She currently serves at the Southern African Customs Union as Executive Secretary. And she really, prior to heading this secretariat, she has served as the Tanzania Country Director of Trademark East Africa. She was responsible in that role for designing, managing, and implementing a multi-million-dollar program in Tanzania that was designed to support the East African Community Regional Integration Programs. This included the improvement of intra-regional trade competitiveness, and enhancing trade facilitation, streamlining procedures, and supporting trade-related infrastructure development. Ms. Alago has over 25 years of professional experience in international trade, primarily in trade policy, regional integration, trade facilitation, investment, environment reforms, trade-related capacity building, and trade-related infrastructure development. She also has a glowing, success with over 10 years experience in managing and delivering multi-donor, multi-country, multi-year development programs to support regional integration and trade competitiveness across Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific states. She has also served as Deputy Chief of Party for the Southern African Global Competitiveness Hub in Gaborone, Botswana, Economic Advisor at the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, and Chief Trade Negotiator for the government of Namibia. She has in-depth knowledge and understanding of the trade and socio-economic development context. Pardon me, it's with such a wonderful profile, I couldn't resist but just share with you, the kind of inspiration that our chief guest brings to this forum this morning. And I then pause there and invite Ms. Paulina Mbala to deliver the keynote address for this session. Over to you, Ms. Paulina.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Let me start by acknowledging my sister, Her Excellency Boema Sekoma, the Secretary General of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, distinguished commissioners, representatives of various revenue authorities from SADC member states, members of the Technical Working Group of the Model PFM Model Law represented here this morning, Mr. Daniel Greenberg, the legal drafter of the SADC Model Law on PFM, Ms. Caroline Kam Walker, the meeting facilitator and an accomplished international development policy and advocacy expert, representatives of the media organization, distinguished participants, citizens of SADC, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Molweni, Dumelang, Sanibonani, bon dia, bonjour, Mararapo, Mapenduka. I hope I've covered everybody in expressing and extending my warm greetings this morning. Allow me on behalf of SACU Secretariat and indeed on my own behalf to express my sincere appreciation for the invitation and opportunity to speak at this consultative meeting with representatives of revenue authorities of SADC member states on the SADC Model Law on Public Financial Management. At the onset, I wish to thank my sister, Her Excellency Madam Sekoma, the Secretary General of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, for inviting me to deliver this keynote address during this important engagement today. As most of you may be aware, the Southern African Customs Union was established in 1910. It consists of 5 member states, namely Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, and South Africa, all of whom are also members of SADC. SACU is the oldest custom union in the world, and it aims and purpose is to maintain free movement of goods amongst member states, in addition, of course, to deepening integration and promoting economic development amongst its members. SACU also negotiates as a bloc with third parties. For this reason, it maintains a common external tariff for goods emanating from outside the common customs territory. As a common customs area, we have a keen appreciation on the need for robust legislations, which is agile enough to regulate the movement of goods amongst member states for facilitating cross-border trade. The seamless movement of goods is very important to our economies, both from a trade facilitation and revenue perspective. On the latter, our mandate brings us into engagement with revenue authorities, both within and outside SACU. Further, legislation governing public financial management in member states as well as in neighboring states is of primary importance in our operations. Given the foregoing, I must highlight, therefore, the need for effective laws governing trade, including laws in public finance management, since trade and finance have a cause and effect relationship, as I will attempt to show later in my address. Madam Moderator, distinguished delegates, Madam Secretary General, I believe I speak for most of us when I say that good public financial management systems are important for good governance, macroeconomic stability, effective use of available resources, and poverty reduction in any country. It goes without saying that effective public financial management ensures that the scarce resources have maximum or optimal impact and are deployed where they are needed most through prudential financial planning, as you indicated in your address, Madam SG. This can help achieve government social development objectives and set the stage for robust service delivery. Countries with strong, transparent, and accountable PFM systems tend to deliver services more effectively and fairly. Notably, strong PFM systems can also help prevent corruption, fraud, and foster aid effectiveness, and critical for us at SACU, help facilitate trade amongst countries. In addition, a strong PFM system improves voluntary compliance to customs and revenue laws, thus improve revenue collections. This contributes greatly to the reduction of compliance costs for revenue administrations and authorities. Distinguished delegates, according to experience, the key drivers of effective PFM includes an understanding of the importance of a robust budget planning process, balanced budget allocation, working with existing national systems, and adopting the right budgeting approach. This way, PFM does not only maximize the impact of public funds, value for money, and service delivery, but also makes interventions sustainable. Undertaking this approach can help produce a strong PFM system that plays a greater role in supporting and strengthening the management of public finance systems. Distinguished delegates, it is also clear that strong and functional PFM systems will result in an improved investment climate, which in turn attract capital, private capital nationally, transnationally, and internationally. On the contrary, a weak or non-functional PFM system opens doors for fraud and corruption and other forms of transnational or cross-border organized crime, which is clearly a disincentive for investments. And I believe the SG also highlighted some of this. With reduced investment, the impact of national treasury can be telling. Most states will struggle to mobilize adequate revenue to meet public expenditure and therefore cannot meet the demand of delivery of public services. This ultimately leads to a breakdown in public service delivery, and in many cases, countries may end up in a debt trap with all its attendant challenges. If a public finance is managed efficiently, this is also likely to lead to timely achievement of government goals such as poverty reduction, owing to effective and efficient service delivery, especially to the poor. Similarly, a transparent and well-managed system inspires increased trust and confidence in the government from the general public, which in turn helps to attract investment, promote economic stability, and stimulate growth. Some of the key requirements for a successful PFM system include strong leadership, good governance, and a transparent reporting, which in turn leads to more and improved accountability, and by implication, the effective use of resources. Madam Moderator, distinguished delegates, the discussion on the SADC model law on public financial management is therefore opportune, whilst its wide adoption will most certainly help member states to close existing legal and regulatory gaps in public financial management across the SADC region. Amongst them being identified gaps in the areas of effective scrutiny of public accounts by parliament committees to minimize and ensure that there is no mismanagement of public funds for statutory bodies, ensuring sufficient enforcement of power pursuant to the examination of the reports of the Auditor General, clear rules for debt management related targets, performance-based budget with clear key performance indicators in the member states, and a need for respective parliaments to exercise oversight and control over public contracts to ensure long-term sustainability in financial management, amongst others. Madam Moderator, distinguished delegates, let me hasten to add that the input of revenue authorities in the formulation of public finance management policy and legislation is pivotal. After all, revenue authorities are among the key implementers of such policies and legislations. In this vein, these authorities bring unique knowledge and extensive expertise to the table. Your meeting today, therefore, is in recognition of the critical role played by revenue authorities in the process of mobilizing public resources through their various revenue collection functions, among others. In this regard, you are called upon to consider the adequacy of the content of the model law in providing a robust normative framework which can help tighten the regulations governing domestic resource mobilization in the SADC region. In other words, you have an opportunity to contribute to the standard setting efforts by the SADC Parliamentary Forum in as far as public financial management is concerned. As I understand, the standard so set can be adopted or adapted and implemented by individual SADC member states in an effort to improve public financial management and to promote harmonization across the region. In addition to that, this meeting is also an opportunity for you to share and learn best practices in matters relating to your respective mandates. I therefore cannot emphasize enough the importance of knowledge sharing through your active participation in today's proceedings. Please note that you have much to give and therefore much is expected of you given the role that you play. Let me end my remarks, Madam Moderator, by commending the SADC Parliamentary Forum for embarking on this noble process of formulating a model law on public financial management. May I also reiterate the importance of this consultative process as it will ensure that best practice is incorporated in the model law for the benefit of the wider citizenry and people of the SADC region. I therefore wish you fruitful deliberation And thank you for your kind attention. And may I also just thank you for the opportunity given to me to deliver this address. Thank you, Madam Moderator. And let me also thank the Secretary General, my dear sister, for this opportunity. I thank you.
Thank you very much. A warm applause to our chief guest, Ms. Paulina. Thank you very much. It is not going to be easy for me to summarize because you've given very strong and deep points that we need to think about, not only during this consultative session, but even beyond. And I'll probably just point out a very key punchline that indeed good public financial systems are good for good governance. They are necessary for good governance. And apart from the potential that the model law placed before us has in improving investment planning, I think one of the key things that we are grappling with across the continent is the load of debt. And their version of debt crisis, therefore, is a very key issue that can be prevented, or at least we can avert, we can deal and ensure that we have averted the debt burden and trap by really considering this public finance management model law, embracing it, and the contribution therefore from the floor is necessary to make this a reality. At this juncture, we thank you, Madam Paulina, and we would like to move to the next session that has the media team presenting to us a video clip before we delve deeper into the conversation. I think media team, over to you. I think there's a clip for presentation. Thank you.
This is not about a campaign against multinationals just blankly. We would like to see clean businesses who come here, pay their taxes when they work with us. The idea of reporting all their profit in a small headquarters where there are only 2 or 3 people working there and overlooking the entire operation, which is 60-70% of it is happening in this continent, we would like that to stop.
Curtail abusive transfer pricing, for example, trade misinvoicing, for example. There's a lot of work that remains to be done.
We must indeed achieve the objective of stopping the bleeding, of retaining these resources on the continent, which are illicitly flowing out of the continent.
These scenes are not so dissimilar to one that happens every day across the African continent. A businessman goes into a bank and makes a transfer of funds to an offshore company. Little questions are asked and millions are funneled out of the country electronically in a matter of minutes to a territory where little or no tax is accrued. This scenario is also surprisingly legal. A senior government minister collaborates with a mineral company executive to stash money and profits earned illegally in a foreign bank. A woman gives $5,000 to a man in the hopes to get her whole family across the border illegally. This is a human trafficker. He deposits the money in an overseas bank where it is cleaned and legitimized. All these are examples of illicit financial flows, or IFFs. Money leaving the continent, being funneled into international, global, already developed capitals and depriving African national economies of vital liquidity and resources. The campaign to stem IFFs, or previously termed capital flight, is by no means a new phenomenon and has recently received a boost by the revelation of the Panama Papers, an unprecedented leak of over 11 million files detailing wealthy individuals and numerous multinationals exploiting secretive offshore tax regimes has elevated the issues of illicit flows to the forefront of the global agenda and media scrutiny. The establishment of the high-level panel represented a watershed and new strategy to combat the illicit flows.
All started on a Sunday in Malawi. We were preparing for the opening of the African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development Conference in 2010. The room was full. We were really surprised with the response. And those who attended, they said, no, this has to go to the ministerial proper the following day. And we had a 2-hour discussion on it. And African Ministers of Finance, in their wisdom, they said, no, this is a development issue that is too important for the continent. We cannot allow this continent, the poor part of the world, to subsidize the rich part.
I sometimes refer to it as being like a hydra with many heads. And a strange hydra, when you cut some heads, by the time you get to the 7th head, the first one has regrown. It's so dynamic, it keeps on changing shape and form. So we have to be resolved to the fact that we will always be chasing, finding out new ways of illicit financial flow and trying to deal with them. That's the first thing.
GFI analyzes illicit financial flows, not only out of Africa, but out of other parts of the world as well. We did a study of illicit money going out of Africa. We were asked by UNECA to come and discuss it. We did so. This is going back 5 or 6 years now. UNECA was frankly fascinated with our analysis that the commercial component of illicit financial flows is bigger than the corrupt component of illicit financial flows, because quite honestly the media had been for years enjoying its criticism of Africa for the amount of corrupt money that is going out. So we came along and said, yes, corruption's a problem, but the biggest part of this is commercial.
According to GFI, these are the 3 clear definitions of IFF as seen before earlier: corruption, criminal, and the commercial aspect. The estimated 50 to 80 billion US dollars that the African continent loses annually in illicit flows is about double that what the continent receives in ODA, or official development assistance. Moreover, based on the methodology of the Economic Commission for Africa, abusive transfer pricing and misinvoicing, the underreporting of amounts produced and profits made are another major source of commercial illicit funds lost forever.
When we then presented our report to the African heads of state and government, they adopted the report in full, adopted the recommendations that we had made, and then decided as African heads of state and government to follow up on the implementation of what had been the recommendations, which had then been adopted as decisions of the AU summit.
There has been a confluence of forces that have really given this a boost. And also, as you know very well, the birth of this was looking for how the continent can finance itself. And one of the immediate low-hanging fruits was the issue of illicit financial flows out of Africa. So I think it's firstly therefore leadership, secondly circumstance, and thirdly the strategy brought to this by the ECA.
So it's been an exciting work, and the whole purpose is to promote African development. And how do you promote it? There has to be resources. It's resource mobilization. And in that regard, what are the obstacles to resource mobilization? And one of the obstacles is illicit financial flows from the continent.
There is really nowhere else on the continent where there is a plug-in for policy and legislative shifts that we need to make on the continent to defend our outflows, other than currently the high-level panel. And they're doing a tremendous job because they've gone from beyond the report and letting it gather dust in somebody's office, but also looking at the systemic work that needs to be done, work with regards to policy and policy shifts, both at the ministerial, Ministry of Finance level, as well as bringing in civil society and regional organizations to make the necessary policy shifts that we require. It's good work that they do.
Even before the Panama Papers, they have managed to elevate the issue of international financial flows, at least, or illicit financial flows from Africa at least, into an international issue. It's a global challenge also. So they anticipated the Panama Papers. Perhaps they'll be similar in future, but already the work of the panel has already put this into the fore, has already elevated this into a global issue, a global challenge, something requiring global action.
Illicit flows have steadily increased over the years in scale and magnitude, and fundamentally undermine our ability on the continent to achieve our sustainable development goals, impede transparency, and risk further increasing inequality and poverty. The campaign to stem IFFs is now galvanized under a wider context, incorporating an array of actors from civil society, tax and governance advocates, and government and parliamentarians.
We wanted it on the global agenda. It is now on the global agenda. So there are many people who are part of this campaign to stop the continent bleeding of these resources. So it's governments, it's civil society, it's business, it's everybody.
Our role we see as bringing the interests of citizens on the table to ensure that the design of policies that will ultimately curtail illicit financial flows and ensure domestic resource mobilization are policies that are not also at the same time leading to increased inequality and having a situation where it's already the poor that are already carrying the burden that are going to suffer out of that. And for that to happen, you need to have civil society organizations in the room to create that critical mass of actors to be able to again, demand that the politicians and the governments actually fulfill their commitments, honor their commitments in terms of what they have said they are planning to do to curb illicit financial flows.
Firstly, do you even know that there's IFFs? And if you do, what does that mean to you as a political party? In election campaigns, in parties that are in parliament, because we just say MPs, some come from ruling parties, some from opposition. Those that are in ruling parties, how are you influencing your own ruling party in terms of IFF? But more so, because parliamentarians get a budget for constituencies, are you taking this as an issue at constituency level, where you are saying in terms of mobilization, how do I take this message and explain it to an ordinary African? I mean, Panama Papers came. For Africa, we say they came, they are gone. For most African communities, it has meant nothing. People don't even know what that is. So we are saying at APNIFT, it is your role as an MP to take this message to that lower level, because these are the people that vote and keep governments afloat. If they are not empowered to know what is going on, they are never going to hold governments accountable.
Accountability is also in need of another key building block to fight illicit flows: capacity. Capacity building of appropriate institutions across the continent is key to improving skills and enforcing financial retention.
We begin to see that capacity challenges or the lack of capacity is a critical issue for combating illicit financial flows and stopping the bleeding. In particular, one area where African countries have big problem is actually implementing the legislations and the laws that they have for money laundering and for corruption and for all kinds of activities, illegal outflow of funds. And so we're working very hard to strengthen these institutions so that they can become more effective in dealing with these issues, and they become better coordinated in terms of what they do.
A clear metric on the success of tracking illicit flows is also its subsequent retrieval. Headway has now been made in a number of countries, generating repatriation of funds and the curtailment of aggressive tax avoidance regimes.
But we need even improvements to track it better. Better accounting and international accounting standards, better capacity with customs officials, better capacity in drawing agreements and other things. I mean, even just identifying or tracking will take some effort.
Uganda recently won an international court case against a British oil company, and as a result of that case, gathered $423 million in income that they would have lost did they not have a capital gains tax policy and law in Uganda. Many African countries do not have that. And because Uganda had that law, they were able to go to international arbitration, win the case, and now have that income.
The cumulative effect of strengthening financial architecture, challenging banking secrecy, and reforming common tax orthodoxy reduces outflows and critically increases income on the continent. As the fight to stem illicit flows continues, the policy and legislative shifts being implemented by the panel will inevitably need to adapt to future innovative and more clandestine methods of outflows, preempting a drive to shift not only the legal structures, but also an overall moral offensive on IFFs and their consequences.
You know for a fact that basically everybody in the world is going to disapprove. It might be legal, but if it's immoral, and people understand what that immorality means in practical terms. But secondly, I think there's much greater commitment among governments throughout the world that where legislation doesn't exist, it must be passed. Where it exists, it must be enforced. That you need all of these agreements and benchmarks, standards, and all that to ensure that you have both you can have moral motivation. Please act correctly, but you must also have the law on your side to say those who don't act correctly, then the law can act against them. So that you see even the definition of what's illicit in terms of the law, as people understand the loopholes and so on, and the impact, the negative impact of these illicit flows in terms of the quality of the lives of many, many people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our comms team, media and comms team, for this very compelling and honest conversation that is coming to this consultative forum through a video format. And as we absorb the truths that have been shared using that medium, I would like to take this very auspicious opportunity to welcome Mr. Daniel Greenberg, the legal drafter of the public finance, the PFM model law for the SADC countries. And you can see from the video that there is a problem, not only in the SADC, sub-region, but in the entire continent. And what the legal drafter presents is food for thought as we are seeking solutions to help guide the policy making in the sub-region that can help really address these and other issues that keep bleeding our continent. Daniel Greenberg is a barrister specializing in legislation and legislative process. He serves as counsel for the Domestic Legislation House of Commons, also serves as a general editor for Westlaw UK Thomson Reuters. And he brings to this process over 30 years of experience in legislative drafting and machinery of government. Mr. Daniel Greenberg has been walking this journey from the very start when the drafting began last year. And in this role, he has shared his extensive experience that has covered so many governments and parliaments in the UK, Albania, Wales, Falkland, just to name a few. He's also had experiences in Africa, in Nigeria, and in other parts of our continent. And as we welcome him to take the floor, allow me to really emphasize that his expertise, that includes being an associate research fellow at the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, fellow of the Bingham Institute for the Rule of Law, instructor on the post-baccalaureate program, diploma program in legislative drafting, among other well-decorated achievements, is really something that we can be thankful for, because together with the panel of, the advisory panel on the SADC model law, Daniel has managed to put this together. And even before this meeting, in other meetings over the past few weeks, has been very engaged in disseminating what is contained in the PFM model law. So this morning, I would like to hand over to Daniel. And before, as I do that, I wish to encourage Daniel to really empty his bag. I think today we have the participants and the distinguished delegates in this meeting will really enjoy from, listening to you. And even though, time is always a consideration, my encouragement is that you just take a deep dive to enable the interaction be as fruitful as we intend it to be. Over to you, Daniel. A very warm welcome.
Distinguished facilitator, thank you very much for your introduction. Distinguished facilitator, esteemed and distinguished Secretary General, distinguished keynote speaker, esteemed delegates, colleagues all, and I, with the permission of the facilitator, extend a particular welcome to those citizens who are joining through social media and other methods, and your involvement in this process is particularly welcome to us all. As professionals, we require the support, engagement, and ownership, ultimately, of the citizenry of the SADC jurisdictions. I will make two background comments, and then I will share my screen and take you through some key features of the model law that is before us today. My first background observation is this. Legislative drafting is always striking a balance between conflicting and competing desiderata. And this model law is no different in that respect from any other. And I would like to engage the understanding of esteemed distinguished delegates by exposing to you the balances that this draft is having to try to make. First, between simplicity and certainty. this does have to be a relatively simple law that everybody is able to understand in respect of its fundamental principles and its main provisions. The video that we have just seen draws our collective attention to the need for people not just to be able to understand the law, but for people not to be able to pretend not to understand the law. It is important that people do not have a simple defense, well, it's all so complicated, how could anybody expect me to know it or understand it or keep it? The fundamental provisions must be such that, as was mentioned in the video, we hope that people will behave morally, responsibly, and effectively, but when they don't, we have to have effective enforcement procedures against them. And the provisions of the law have to be sufficiently simple to ensure that a defense of complete failure to understand and a sympathetic understanding that nobody can understand this law is just not available. And for the same reason and by the same token, the law has to be certain. It has to be clear. If you're charging somebody with abuse of public funds, it has to be clear, in order to maintain the rule of law, the parameters of the abuse have to be evidentially certain, so that I know what charge I'm facing, and so the court can see it proved or disproved with complete certainty. So we've got to keep it simple, but it also has to be very certain, and certainty requires a degree of complexity. So that's your first balance. And similarly, it has to be accessible and it has to be accurate for the same kinds of reason. It has to be accessible because this has to be owned by everybody at whom it is aimed, and this is not and should not be seen, if I may say so, Madam Facilitator, this should not be seen as a piece of internal government legislation that only affects governments. It affects everybody who supplies to government. It affects everybody who is supplied by government. It affects state-owned enterprises, which featured highly in relation to the illicit financial flow issues raised by the video. It affects states, localities, but ultimately, it affects everybody who pays taxes. We saw, Madam Facilitator, we saw a video clip in the first consultative forum that I found particularly compelling. It was a series of reactions from young citizenry in SADC countries. It was a series of their reactions to being asked about the importance of public financial management. And the reactions were very powerful, and they were not as superficial as I, in my naivety, was expecting. They weren't just sort of, oh, well, everybody's corrupt and isn't that bad. And one of the most incisive, to my mind, was a young woman who said, the thing is, I actually think quite a lot of the taxes that I provide are being spent in the way that they were meant to be spent. But quite a lot of them are being spent, I notice, on improving road infrastructure. And she said, that's great if you live in a big city with roads. But I don't, she said. I'm never actually going to get near a road, probably. That was the implication of what she was saying. And what do I get out of this? Now, there are, of course, lots of ways in which she benefits from having a good road structure in the cities, and I'm sure she would admit that. But the compelling point was every citizen has to look at public financial management and feel that they are beneficiaries and not just contributors. And the system has to be accessible in a way that gives confidence to the citizen who reads the act, the model law. It has to be accessible at that level. but at the same time, it has to be accurate at a highly technical level. Distinguished delegates today are technicians in a profession that is one of the most complex professions that exist. And the provisions of the model law have to sound in a complexity and accuracy that accurately supports the technical concepts and activities of your profession. Another difficult balance. And then we have to balance clarity with flexibility. To give you an example, when we come to look at the model law in a few moments, you will see there is a part dedicated to controlling and regulating crypto assets and cryptocurrency in particular. Very important. Madam Facilitator, as part of the technical working group, you and your colleagues encouraged me to expand the original provisions on cryptocurrency, and I have done so. And in doing so, I have drawn, as you know, on the principles adumbrated by the London School of Economics and Political Science Institute of Global Affairs, Basic Principles for Regulating Crypto Assets, 4th draft. But let's be honest, it's a guess. It's a guess. None of us have the foggiest idea what central banks are going to be facing in relation to the regulation of crypto assets and cryptocurrency in a year, never mind 10 years. It's one of the most fast developing social and financial issues of today. Illicit financial flows, which were the subject of the video we have just seen, are just beginning to take advantage of the invisibility of crypto assets and their sitting inevitably below the existing regulatory radar in a way that gives challenges that we haven't encountered ever before. So yes, Part 12 has to lay down the principles of crypto regulation, but it has to do so in a way that is sufficiently flexible to allow the SADC jurisdictions to embrace, control, and react to future developments in the crypto world. For all we know, Madam Facilitator, central banks around the world may be issuing their own cryptocurrencies before too long. Some of them have indicated an intention to do so. Others have said they would never do so in a million years. And as we all know, what public authorities say they would never do in a million years, they're presumably planning for against having to possibly do tomorrow. So none of us know. And again, we have to be flexible, but we have to be clear at the same time. And finally, we have to be balancing a principled approach that engages morality, as was discussed towards the end of the video clip, but also leads to clear and effective enforcement. So we are, Madam Secretary General in her address this morning drew attention to misuse and mismanagement of public funds and the need, the particular engagement of delegates today in those issues. And we do need to have a new series of offences, overarching offences that delegates will see when we come to that part of the draft. But again, they have to be based on a broad principle that people understand and accept. Otherwise, by creating new offences, we simply create new avoidance opportunities and appetites. So that is my first background point. My second is this. And again, Madam Secretary General alluded to it in her comments, as I think did you, Madam Facilitator, in your opening remarks. Contextualization. This is a model law that is being presented to a number of different states, each of whom has a unique constitutional, administrative, and legislative structure. The model law, therefore, has to be capable of being adapted to reflect the constitutional arrangements in each country. In a number of places in the text, I have placed footnotes that directly advert to the fact that particular provisions are likely to be found already overlapping with provisions of a particular jurisdiction's constitution or a financial law that already exists in another form. In domesticating, transposing, and implementing the model law, each jurisdiction will need to make its own judgment as to how to adapt and modify it to reflect their existing constitutional and legislative position. So it has to be modular and it has to be capable of agile application. But at the same time, the fundamental principles of the law have to be clear enough for it not to be diluted beyond recognition or efficacy in the process of domestication. With those background remarks, I will now try to share the model law on my screen. And I would ask somebody from the technical secretariat to let me know if this is now showing to participants, please. Could somebody confirm whether my screen is now sharing to participants?
Yes, Mr. Greenberg, we can see it now.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. I start in part 2, which sets out the aims and objectives in line with the philosophy that I adumbrated a few moments ago. And in the light of the video we just saw and the particular interests of the revenue authorities represented by distinguished delegates today, I draw our attention particularly to transparency and accountability, because I think one of the thoughts that struck me as I listened to that video clip was that when we are dealing with illicit processes, the only way to shine light on them is for them to be taking place against a backdrop of a mechanism that is accountable and transparent when it works properly, so that one can spot the gaps. You can see where the transparency is not supported, and that tells you where to start looking. Transparency in public financial management, therefore, is going to be key to identifying, monitoring, and controlling illicit financial flow in relation to transactions with a public financial management component. And as I said before, that goes beyond purely internal government transactions, and through procurement and other parts of the model law, it goes very broadly into the commercial world. This clause 9, I emphasize to delegates, is not part of the preamble merely. It is an operative provision of the text of the Act, and the courts, when they construe and apply the Act, will treat it as such, and they will give effect to it as an operative provision. Therefore, accountability, transparency, independence, and modernity will be objectives that, as a matter of administrative law, are to be pursued in the implementation of the model law in its domesticated form. And it applies to the raising of revenue, but it also applies to the expenditure of resources. Revenue authorities will be particularly interested to learn that we have focused in particular not just on cash resource accounting, and indeed when we come to the accounting part later, you will see that we deal separately with resource accounts and whole of government accounts to give real transparency to the wider and more fundamental financial operations of a state. These principles are to be taken into accounting practice and also into parliamentary oversight. Next, and this is another provision that I enhanced at the request of the technical working group, we have a requirement to entrench measurable outcomes that can lead to the optimization of revenue and expenditure, to prevent unauthorized expenditure, which is obviously of key relevance to today's discussions, to move towards sustainability, and to support parliamentary accountability and oversight. And these outcomes must have measurable benchmarks for testing success. And again, in terms of societal involvement, in terms of citizenry engagement, it seems to me that these are critical principles, that citizens can be given reasons to trust those who are managing the public finances and not simply be asked to place their trust in them as a matter of confidence or judgment. Moving further towards the balance between the simplicity and clarity of the principled approach that I discussed, we articulate core public financial management principles, transparency, and here the transparency principle takes the form of a direct right for the public to accentuate the fact that this is a bill about the rights and property of citizens, the public. The accountability and participation principle, again, meaningful opportunities for public engagement in budget and other aspects of public financial management principles in accordance with the principles of a participatory democracy. Oversight principle and responsibility principle, and revenue authorities represented by distinguished delegates today will recognize the responsibility principle as going to the heart of the values that they bring to their professional involvement in public financial management. And those values are drawn out one stage further and articulated at a public service level in clause 12. Integrity, independence and impartiality, equity, professionalism, accountability and responsiveness. Values which, if I may dare suggest, are those values which distinguished delegates already embrace, embody, and apply in their daily functions. Clause 13 reflects the need for adaptation in each jurisdiction in the light of the constitutional arrangements to which I referred earlier. Part 3 identifies the core authorities in the public financial management structure, the minister, the secretary, who as head of the permanent financial civil service has permanent responsibilities of impartiality and a permanence that goes beyond the government of the day, coming with powers of inspection, moving through to the finance ministry with its general functions, accounting officers embedded in each public authority, with general functions of a kind that delegates would expect to see in relation to the use of resources and the maintenance of records, and the Auditor General, about whom more is said below. Part 4 outlines the core components of the public fund system, starting with the consolidated fund, but moving through into other accounts, retention accounts, trading accounts, debt servicing accounts. And at the last consultative forum, we were asked to think seriously about saying more about special funds here, although they are touched upon elsewhere. Part 5 sets out a standard supply and appropriation procedure that is in its fundamental components common to jurisdictions of SADC. It includes appropriations in aid. It includes the possibility of virement as well as appropriations in aid. And although these are all potential leakage points in terms of regulatory control, they are all, again, things required to match flexibility with certainty. So here we are seeing in the principles of financial management a practical reflection of the balances that I was alluding to earlier. Appropriation and aid is, it's unavoidable, but it has to take place within parameters and subject conditions that allow it to be monitored and allow it to, and do not allow it to undermine the fundamental principles of the appropriation structure. Part 6 deals with parliamentary control, and it establishes a parliamentary engagement principle that Parliament should use the full range of mechanisms available to it for the purpose of overseeing and controlling the public financial management process. And this, of course, particularly involves engagement with the Auditor General, the National Audit Authority, and other audit bodies. The Auditor General is dealt with in a fasciculus beginning with clause 36. At earlier stage in consultations, we were encouraged by Auditors General to go further in bolstering the independence of the Auditor General by removing from the government even the power to make procedural regulations relating to the offices of the Auditor General. That is something we've agreed to take away and think about. Of course, the question is who do you replace it with? How do you have effective control over the audit arrangements if government, the executive, are not able to provide those arrangements? And that is something that we have agreed to take away and consider. But the Auditor General is accountable to Parliament only and independent of government, and those principles are, of course, sacrosanct. The National Audit Office similarly. The Public Accounts Committee is discussed in some detail, but again, always in accordance with the standing orders and procedures of each Parliament, because the model law must not be prescriptive for individual member states as to how their parliamentary arrangements work. Interestingly, perhaps from a perspective of this morning's meeting, there will be a complaints portal requirement, again, as part of the engagement principle operated by the Public Accounts Committee. Whistleblowing, an issue that I know will be very dear to the heart of delegates today, is fundamentally recognized. The importance of whistleblowing is fundamentally recognized in clause 45. And under the supervision of the Public Accounts Committee, the minister is required, the executive has a duty to confer legal protection on whistleblowers in relation to financial irregularities. Part 7 deals with the national budget. It's a standard annual appropriation with environment. It's a standard budget and estimate process with a budget debate and consultation. But I do draw delegates' attention to specific accompanying documentation, the requirement to have measurable departmental objectives, a sustainable fiscal policy statement, a sustainable development goal statement, an international commitment statement, an equality and diversity statement to reassure the woman who spoke in that video to which I referred earlier that equality and diversity in all its aspects, gender, but also wealth and location, equality and diversity in all its aspects is at the heart, must be at the heart of a public financial management system. This is not just about money, this is about people. And past year and future implications, multi-year budget projections, and a public debt statement. Again, balancing certainty and flexibility, we make provision for in-year development so that they are controllable. They're inevitable. The need for flexibility is inevitable, but it has to be controllable and it has to be capable of being monitored and observed. Part 8 deals with government borrowing. It classifies public debt. It requires a debt management strategy using debt management committees. It makes provision about government securities and borrowing and other borrowing, including on lending and guarantees and indemnities, all of which are part of important flexibility of resource management. And it requires those statements to be accompanied by a debt schedule for transparency and accountability so that people can see where we are. And then it does have a debt ceiling, which, if breached, triggers additional accountability and transparency requirements, including excess reports and continuing special scrutiny. Part 9 deals with procurement and the use of resources in accordance with the procurement maximizing value, including cost effectiveness and other aspects of value for money. Again, flexibility nods at the importance of being able to procure in emergencies in a manner that meets the emergency. Part 10 deals with the public accounting principles and procedures. And as I mentioned before, we are introducing as a base standard an understanding of the importance of resource accounting and not merely cash accounting. And the Auditor General scrutinizes that and the whole of government accounts that are prepared in accordance with clause 102. Provision is made for other accounts. Part 11, as I mentioned before, introduces new concepts of misconduct, misuse, and maladministration, a new offence of financial misconduct, a new offence of misuse of public funds, and a new provision about maladministration being reported by the Auditor General or the Public Accounts Committee or certain investigations and inquiries, and being able to lead to disqualifications from specified public offices. There will also be regulations made under the model law dealing with the recovery of public funds in respect of which there has been misuse. Part 12 is the cryptocurrency outline that I mentioned with its principle-based concepts of classification, protection, technology, and constancy. And there is particular reference to the importance of documenting separately crypto assets when dealing with public debt and dependency. And there's a requirement to have a strategy. Okay, we don't know where we're going, but we can have a strategy and publish a strategy that maps developments in the real world. State governments, local authorities, and state-owned enterprises will be subject to the model law, but with modifications as necessary. Finally, the final provisions include a power to make supplementary regulations for flexibility and adaptability, a power to issue guidance, both subject to parliamentary oversight and scrutiny, and parliamentary scrutiny being provided for expressly. With 1 minute to go, Madam Facilitator, I have achieved what I hope will be an adumbration of the principal features of the model law, in respect of which I now warmly invite questions and observations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greenberg, for taking us through a warm applause and recognition from Madam SG. Thank you very much for, first presenting really back to very strong background points that have informed this development, and taking us further through all the sections of the PFM model law and explaining, the issues that have inspired the provisions, drafting, and even reviews based on continued consultations that you have been participating in and continue to participate. At this juncture, I do not want to take any more minutes from the audience, and I would hereby wish to open the floor for input, for comments, observations, and questions that may be coming from the floor from our distinguished participants this morning. So the floor is open. The floor is open. Feel free to use your reactor. You can simply go to your reaction icon at the bottom of your Zoom and raise your hand. And with that, we'll be able to see you and give you an opportunity to intervene. Okay, as the participants are preparing, I would like to engage or indulge, our main panelists, Madam SG and the Chief Speaker, to share some reflections on what has come and what Greenberg has presented. Just some early reflections so that the same spirit can be spread around the room. Please feel free to raise your hand and make an intervention. But at this juncture, let's have Madam SG come through. Madam SG, any observations from you?
Thank you very much, Director. If you indulge us, kindly we can speak at the end, but for now, may we kindly just open it up to participants. Dr. Greenberg was actually reiterating what is contained in the model law, and is inviting observations and input of our commissioners to help us develop the draft further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe to ease the process, we could go with the countries, and allow me, with your permission, Madam SG, allow me to call out the countries or the members per country, so that we can have observations presented in that manner. Maybe it would be easier to enable active participation. But should there be a burning comment from the floor, nevertheless, even if we haven't gotten to your country, you can feel free to raise your hand so that you can present your opinion or question. If this is acceptable, I would like to call upon our first country on the alphabet, Angola. if we have the Angola delegates in the room. Okay. Any comments from the representatives from Angola? The floor is yours. If there's any comments, any observations.
Good morning, Madam. We do have Angola delegate at the room, and we appreciate. So we do still have to listen, and then if we have anything to say, we will do ask so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ismenia from Angola. And thank you for confirming to us that you are following the conversation. And if there's anything, please feel free to bring it up at the point it will come. Can we hear from Botswana, representatives of Botswana? Do we have Botswana in the house? Botswana representative, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Madam Facilitator. Protocol observed. Thank you very much for the presentations and the model legislation. It was very informative, as well as the documents that we received. The comment that I wanted to make was to find out whether there are any other treaties with some of the obligations that have been elaborated in the model law that we are to look at, so that we are seeing which treaties we are domesticating. The reason I'm asking is that from the concept note that we received, I noted that some of the issues here are covered under the Sustainable Development Goals, the Maputo Protocol, for example. And I wanted to find out, are there any other treaties? For example, if we were to look at for procurement, we have treaties, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which we have to domesticate, and our procurement laws are in line with the treaty obligations that we have signed up to. So I wanted to find out if for the public finance management model law, there are any other treaties that we need to take into consideration as we will be looking at this model legislation for purposes of domesticating. Thank you, Madam Facilitator.
Thank you very much, Lynette. Thank you very much, Lynette. That's a very important question. If there are other references in terms of policy framework that we'll be looking at, and we will pack that. I think we can collect a few questions, then bring back to the floor. So I would like to take this opportunity to call upon the Democratic Republic of Congo. DRC representative, la parole est à vous.
You have the floor from the DRC.
The floor is yours. Do we have DRC in the house? Okay. Maybe not, but should there be a representative of DRC, please feel free to intervene when you'll be able to do so. DRC, last call for DRC. Okay, so let us move to Eswatini. Eswatini, representative in the house. Do we have Eswatini in attendance? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam. My name is Sipesi Khehlanze from the Eswatini Revenue Service. All protocol observed. Yeah, I'm noticing from the model law that the penalty provisions are left blank. Maybe we're still going to discuss those because in my take, you know, public finance committees are quite lacking the powers to impose punitive sanctions towards maladministration or abuse of public finances. And so I think that is one area that we really have to consider in this modern law. And my other comment is I really appreciated the video that we were watching, especially the emphasis on morality, good morality, and the law, and how do these complement, how this should complement each one another. But at the same time, there is that element we've seen in most African countries, not just in SADC, but we've seen in most African countries that you can have a very good law that is on paper, but because of political interference, you find that the law is at times ignored for the benefit of political favors. Now, as revenue authorities, we don't have much influence in such scenarios. So that is my concern as to how I appreciate that we have sort of in the beginning, we sort of highlighted that there needs to, a revenue authority needs to contribute to how the public finances that we collect are spent. But in view of, you know, in view of that political interference, it becomes very cumbersome or impossible for a revenue authority to do anything. Thank you, Madam. I think those were my key observations.
Thank you very much, Sipesile. I hope I pronounced it justly, given my limitation in pronunciation. But thank you very much for this very important observation. We are taking note and can have that. And should there be any additional comments, even for those who have already spoken, we encourage you to, you know, post it on your chat if you are able or in a position to. Otherwise, after Eswatini, we would like to invite observations from the representatives of Lesotho. Lesotho representative, if you're in the house, Lesotho, the floor is yours. Anybody from Lesotho? Okay.
I'm here, Madam Chair.
All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you very, very much, Lesotho. Please take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Director. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nteboheng Bless from Lesotho Revenue Authority. My question is simple. I just want to find out the relationship between this law and tax authorities, you will ignore please excuse my ignorance as far as this law is concerned, because I was hoping, unless if you can tell me that such consultations have been held for our parent ministries. You know, we may have different setups in our different countries, because as far as Lesotho is concerned, we've got a mother ministry or department of finance, which is actually responsible for ministering this legislation. As far as tax authorities or revenue authorities are concerned, we deal mainly with taxes and customs. So I just want to find out the relationship between revenue authorities and this law. We may have different structures and setups in different countries, but from Lesotho, this is how I observe the relationship. Thank you very much, Madam Director.
Thank you very much, Nteboheng. Yes, this is an important policy question, and we have taken note of that. Allow me, distinguished participants, to take one more country, then we can open, bring this back for response, and then go to the rest of the countries so that we can take the clusters and not pile up too many questions. I really appreciate your indulgence on that. So one more country, Madagascar. Madagascar, do we have Madagascar's representative in the house? Madagascar, the floor is yours. You can take the floor. Okay, there's a little silence. Do we have Madagascar in attendance? All right, okay. We'll try call them again when we open. I think for this first five respondents, one, Angola said they'll come back should they have any issue. Botswana on issues of policy provision, any references we have that are regional, and with good example, good parallel reference to Maputo's. And then from Eswatini, very clear question on the issue of penalties. And how does this model law provide a political interference? A slight paraphrasing, but indeed, what could be is, then we have, the issue of, ministry and how this is connected to that. Over to you, Mr. Greenberg, and I think for the policy question, I seek the indulgence of the SADC parliamentary team. With your permission, Madam SG, I think that question, when we get there, can come back to the Secretariat. But for now, over to you, Mr. Greenberg, for the issues that are raised.
In relation to the questions from the delegate from Botswana, I confirm that aspects of the model law will be relevant to the implementation of a number of different international treaties. She has correctly identified, if I may say so, that this directly feeds into implementation of corruption, United Nations anti-corruption treaties. It will also relate to money laundering treaties. But it goes much further than that. As you saw from the statements that are required to be laid with the budget, it goes into sustainability. So there will be connection with ecological and environmental, local, regional and international treaties. It goes into equality and diversity as stated, and therefore again will engage some of those. So this is not a simple transpositional exercise. This is not a model law to transpose one or more specific international treaties, but in the course of the implementation and domestication of this law, a number of implementation processes will indeed be engaged and delivered to a greater or lesser extent. In response to the comment from the delegate from Eswatini, I confirm that the reason for leaving the penalties blank in the model law is that in each jurisdiction, the penalties have to be proportionate and coherent within the context of that jurisdiction's penal and correctional policies. I respectfully agree with everything that the delegate said about the need for effective tools, and that is why, as I say, each jurisdiction must consider, both in relation to criminal offences and in relation to civil penalties and other matters, a coherent structure of enforcement. In response to the delegate from Lesotho, I confirm, as I said before in my remarks, footnotes in the model law will identify where there are particular needs to adjust to reflect the constitutional and other legislative framework of each jurisdiction. And she has, if I may say so, correctly identified one, which is in relation to the responsibilities of the Finance Ministry and its connection with the tax and customs collection authorities. She will notice that the model law is presently drafted very much in a way that sounds as though it would fit with the division of responsibilities in Lesotho, but she and her colleagues will of course satisfy themselves of that in due course, and they will they will understand that other jurisdictions may have different arrangements that will require to be reflected in their domestication implementation policy. That deals with the questions I was asked. I would, however, like to make the following observation, that both in relation to the questions that have been raised and also in relation to any other questions that delegates may have, we particularly encourage you to provide additional detail in writing to the address that has been displayed in the chat bar, and all comments will be collated by rapporteurs and by the Secretariat, and we will have one or more rounds of model law revision to reflect the comments made at the end of the consultative process.
Thank you, Greenberg. Over to you, Madam SG.
Thank you very much for those interventions, Dr. Greenberg. Mine is just to reiterate and indicate that the public financial model law does not reiterate treaties, but opens a window of opportunity for treaties to be monitored. For instance, Dr. Greenberg at the beginning talked, or as he went through the model law, there were issues related to fiduciary arrangements that are critical that we should be able to monitor. And these are contained in the model law as part of how each country respectively could harmonize the framework. He also indicated that some of what we can do, or some of the inspiration that the model law could provide for us, is to ensure that through the budget document, which requires more treaty information to be submitted, part of this work could be done. For example, one could say, and this is an example that Dr. Greenberg just gave, when you look at the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, there is a lot of inspiration that comes out of there. And this could be what inspires us, for instance, to customize our public financial management reforms and needs. The model law, therefore, has underpinnings and is inspired and is allowed for countries to look at, for instance, what underpins borrowing or lending in your country. And you are therefore invited, like Dr. Greenberg has indicated, to reflect on these and be able to make comments. One would also say that the budget document, for instance, in each of our countries, allows for monitoring of treaties, because the budget must say, for instance, are we achieving the sustainable development goals? Are they being implemented? How and through which budget lines could some of these things be looked at? When you also get inspiration from what global donors, there's a component on aid, the issues of global donors, what are the issues for harmonization for each of our countries? I hope that this will assist us in how we process and analyze this particular presentation of the model law. And just to underline that, we are not in any way saying the model law is linked to X and Y, and therefore this should be what obtains. I hope I haven't confused the audience any further, but just to put it differently, but that's exactly what Dr. Greenberg was actually putting before us. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam SG. Your intervention is most appreciated, and thank you for shedding clarity. We have also received, a very excellent input in chat from the Republic of South Africa. And here the South Africa representative, I think, has posted to all, and definitely a key question: will the delegates be granted the opportunity to further ventilate the law with colleagues with specific expertise in areas such as illicit financial flows, etc. Of course, the expanse of the model law has all the different expertise captured, and I believe this will be the case. In fact, the SADC PF Secretariat welcomes written, consolidated written input into this process. I think there are quite a number of questions that are already posted, and I will give Greenberg an opportunity to reflect as we go around the room, collecting much more input. We had reached M, so we'll give an opportunity for Dr. Greenberg to reflect. And as we are doing that, please remember our comms colleagues, our media and communication colleagues are requesting that we switch on our cameras when delivering a contribution on the floor. This is for the benefit of broadcasting. As you know, we are live on YouTube, and this gives an opportunity for viewers, citizens, and other stakeholders that are interested in the process to follow and learn, but also enable them to understand what we are doing as we seek your consultation in this process. So we had gotten to Madagascar. I will make one more call for Madagascar. If the Madagascar representative is in the house, we welcome you to take the floor and make your observations. Madagascar, if you're in the house, we welcome you to take the floor and share your opinion. Very well. It seems Madagascar, we'll still give them an opportunity at another, in another moment if they come. Malawi, representative of Malawi. Malawi, do we have a representative from Malawi?
Yes, please. I hope you can hear me.
Okay, Beatrice. Yes, if possible, you can share your camera for broadcast, if possible. If not, kindly proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. we are following the conversation, the presentation that was made by Mr. Greenberg. And at the moment, we don't have any comment, but I think we'll share our views and comments as we go along through this consultative process. Thank you for the time being.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. You are most welcome to reflect and share your observations in due course. We would like now to take this opportunity to welcome Mauritius. Mauritius, the floor is yours. Kindly unmute. Mauritius. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Thank you for this opportunity. We have been following this conversation, and there is one particular aspect that we are really interested in, that is cryptocurrency. We don't have any comments at the moment, but we are going to reflect on it, especially on that aspect, and we will get back with our comments. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Greenberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Yoganand and team. Your indulgence, your commitment to reflect and give your feedback at a later stage is most welcome. And we thank you. We thank you for that. We thank you for that, the commitment that you have taken in that regard. Mozambique representative in the House, the floor is yours. Mozambique, if there's a representative, you're most welcome to make your observations at this point. Anybody from Mozambique? Okay, not at the moment. Okay, we will move on to Namibia. Namibia representative, would you kindly take the floor? Anyone from Namibia? Distinguished participant from Namibia, you can take the floor if you're in the house, if you can hear us. Okay. We can then take this opportunity and pass it to Seychelles. Seychelles, do we have someone from Seychelles representing Seychelles? Any representative from Seychelles? Okay, allow me to move on to South Africa. I'll give South Africa the floor. They have made their input, but if there's anything that you would like to share from South Africa representative? Yolande? Is Yolande in the house?
I am. Thank you very much, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I think we have posted our comments quite extensively in the chat group. I think what is very important is that we still ventilate this law with our various expertise. If you look at my portfolio, it relates to finance and procurement, but we do have quite a lot of expertise in the organization pertaining to, amongst others, illicit financial flows, cryptocurrency. So I think just to augment this better, the question was posed if we still have the opportunity to do so. And I think what's very important from a South African perspective is to understand that our national treasury, to whom the South African SARS is reporting, is in essence the policymaker. So we provide input to the policies, but the policymakers remain the national treasury. So I'm not sure if it's the same setup in all of the other countries, but certainly in South Africa, it is as such. So that's at this point all from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yolande, for making emphasis and clarifying on the great input that you have shared. As we just have a few more countries, I beg your indulgence, distinguished participants, to just complete the list and then hand back to the legal drafter to make some reflections or responses from what is emerging from this conversation. So at this juncture, I would like to invite representative of Tanzania. Tanzania, representative, the floor is yours. If we have Tanzania in the house, please feel most welcome to take the floor. Okay. Allow me to move swiftly, and should there be the Tanzanian, should the Tanzanian representative come in or wish to make a comment, we will give them an opportunity at a later stage. May I welcome a representative of Zambia. Zambia, if you're in the house, the floor is yours. We welcome you to take the floor. Zambia. Okay, if there's someone in Zambia, feel most welcome. Okay, and finally we have Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, any input from Zimbabwe's representative is most welcome at this juncture. Zimbabwe.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Madam Facilitator. We from Zimbabwe are observing and following the discussions, and we'll give further feedback when we have ventilated the legislation. However, our primary comments would be that we would request that the drafter possibly just advise how, yes, this is a model law, and our assumption is that it's being provided for member countries that may not have their own public finance management acts already in operation. But possibly the guidance we would like is for those members that already have PFMA acts in operation. How would he advise for us to domesticate the model law? We say so because looking at the model law, it covers a large expanse of areas, and it touches so many areas of law, which when we look at the Zimbabwean jurisdiction, are covered by other pieces of legislation that are not the Public Finance Management Act. That's the first one. And the second aspect also is that we have a similar setup as has been expounded by South Africa, and I think it was Lesotho as well, who said that their ministries, as revenue authorities, their ministries of finance remain the policymakers, and as a revenue authority, we simply administer what the policymakers have, the policy positions that the ministry has taken. And we are collectors of revenue. Yes, we do proffer advice on policy with regards to revenue collection, but we don't formulate policy. And I think just to also add on the aspect that was raised by Lesotho, to say to what extent, therefore, has any consultation been done with the respective ministries of finance as the responsible authorities, for want of a better term, that administer public funds. And I think from that perspective, we as revenue authorities can, looking at the Zimbabwean setup, there are certain functions that do, or certain portions of the model law that would affect our processes and our mandate. But from a policy perspective, that remains the preserve of Treasury. And maybe if we can just get that clarification, and whether or not that consultation with the respective policymakers has been done or is penciled to be done. And the other aspect also, I think, dovetailing in with the issue that was raised, I didn't take note of the speaker. I think it was Botswana, with respect to other treaties that could fall, that could touch on this model law. I'm also thinking that to what extent, therefore, is it us as revenue authorities that we are required to then make the necessary consultations with, for example, the Attorney General's office or the government legal drafters, who would be responsible for making sure that whatever law actually there is that cohesion and coherence and dovetailing with whatever legislation is already in place and whatever other obligations that the government or the respective ministries may have. So I think with those remarks, safe to also add that we are continuing, as South Africa has also said, to get the specific areas within our organization and also our parent ministry to then look at certain areas and give us their reflections, so that when we do come back to you with the fuller considerations, we have gotten the input from all the various specialized areas and personnel dealing with the various provisions that this model law is intended to cover. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Janet, for the excellent input. And of course, following up on the clarity of this consultation vis-a-vis the policy making roles of the ministry. And I think this has come up severally from different countries, given that revenue authorities are applying what has been established by the ministries. I think that point is very well taken. I also really recognize the request that all other countries have also made in terms of consulting with colleagues to come back with a consolidated input or remarks and any other questions that may emerge in that process. I think at this juncture, I will invite the legal drafter to take the floor and share any observations that he may have made so far, including any responses that that especially for those that have been posted quite succinctly by the Republic of South Africa team. And then we will also give an opportunity for policy issues to be addressed by the SADC Parliamentary Forum Secretariat. Over to you, Dr. Greenberg. Over to you.
So in response to the comments made by the delegate from Zimbabwe, yes, indeed, implementation is going to be is going to require a certain amount of structural consideration for those countries that already have a Public Financial Management Act, which most do. And I agree with her observation that different provisions of the model law are likely to address quite a wide range of existing acts with which they will need to be dovetailed. And I agree with that. I would have thought, and this is a matter for each jurisdiction, but I would have thought that the executive would produce a single piece of legislation that makes overarching amendments of the Public Finance Management Act and any other relevant pieces of legislation, so as to give a coherence to the implementation of the model law. And for Zimbabwe, for example, the first process would be a simple match of their PFMA with the model law to identify areas that require to be enhanced, if there are, and then a single piece of overarching legislation would make any necessary amendments to provide the necessary interregional consistency. The point made by Zimbabwe and South Africa, that of course, yes, the Treasury is the policy-making body, the Ministry of Finance has some policy responsibilities, and yes, of course, the revenue authorities are operational, primarily operational, and of course that is right. And you will notice that's why I have not listed the revenue collection authorities as core Part 2 authorities, but of course your responsibilities intersect with provisions of the model law in a number of ways, which is why there was a separate consultation with you today. But yes, of course, we take the point about the limits of your ministerial responsibilities. On the separate points made by South Africa, yes, okay, the point about ministerial powers, as I said, that's something we were asked to think about again by the Auditors General, and we've agreed to do that. But I repeat the question that I put to some of you before. Okay, if it's not going to be done by regulation by the minister, who is it? Please let us know in your written responses, please let us know by whom you think it would be constitutionally appropriate in your jurisdiction for supplementary detail to be provided. And bear in mind that accountability and transparency are very important to the implementation of this model law. There are jurisdictions that are used to doing quite a lot of administrative law by administrative direction of different public authorities. And that is not fundamentally easy to equate with requirements for accountability as well as transparency. So there are rule of law issues here, there are separation of powers issues here. So yes, we would like to hear observations on the limitation of ministerial powers, but we also need to hear your observations on how do you provide the flexibility in relation to administrative matters while still providing for accountability. Section 27 on refunds, but taxes, of course, about tax refunds. Well, absolutely. And the answer to the interface isn't clear because there isn't one. Tax refunds are done as tax refunds in accordance with fiscal legislation, and the clause 27 provisions are very much a separate regime. So that is the straightforward answer. Could you have some procedural coherence? Well, that's a matter for each jurisdiction, but this is about consolidated fund adjustments. It's not about tax refunds by the operational tax collectors. The question about the interrelationship between confidentiality provisions and gateway provisions here under clause 38, for example, and other confidentiality provisions in legislation. Yes, again, similar to the comments of the delegate from Zimbabwe, yes, in domesticating, each jurisdiction will have to consider conflicts between this and other other more general provisions elsewhere. But of course, the Auditor General's right to access is very fundamental. In some cases, it's constitutionally supreme and takes precedence over data protection legislation. And that is the result that would be expected to be achieved here too. I note what is said about section 59.5. The question about why we're regulating cryptocurrencies, the technical committee and others regard cryptocurrency as a developing, as an asset of emerging and developing importance, and we do not believe that a public financial management structure would be complete and future-proof going forward if it were not able to deal separately with the classification and regulation of assets flowing in or flowing out, or simply relevant to, in relation to debt management, for example, assets held in a crypto form, in a virtual form. The other issues listed in the final comment of the South African delegates, in my view, are adverted to in the model law. If there are ways that they think they need to be enhanced, then perhaps they will be kind enough to adumbrate those ways in their written submissions, and I will, of course, be more than delighted to give attention to that.
Thank you very much for your response. And, you've really covered quite a lot of the comments. Of course, as we have emphasized, the channels for communicating your observations are open. And I think one of the key things that we would really wish to bring to the attention of the Secretariat is probably that elaboration that this consultative session is not meant to convert the participating delegates into policymakers. I think it's important that we emphasize that. And that, the important thing is to really see, indeed, if there's key things that are missing or are not well elaborated, the effort for the legal draft would then be put to ensure that there is clarity that covers revenue authorities as key, key players, key actors within the public financial management ecosystem. I think this is the importance. So, of course, the respect and the recognition of the ministerial level and the role that they play is very much, in line with what SADC stands for. We do understand that level and role that the ministerial players play, and this by no means diminishes that, but rather is an opportunity for feeding into a system or feeding into a document that will also finally end up at the financial, table, or the ministries of finance and relevant departmental tables. So I think just for clarity that is it. So you are not usurping, you are simply just telling us these issues are covered, this sound right, this ones could be strengthened.
I believe the bandwidth from our facilitator
forgive me, I'm back, and I would like to welcome the Secretariat team to make observations, and also our chief guest, with your permission, Madam SG, if
I believe our facilitator is struggling with her bandwidth. Okay, she's back again. Thank you. We understand.
Madam Facilitator is muted.
Forgive me. This internet does do wonders to all of us, even on days like this. Forgive me, I was off for a moment, just zoomed in and out. I thank you, Madam SG. Thank you, Kurasha, colleagues. I think just as the internet was zooming in and out, I was requesting for Secretariat input or any observations to the entirety of comments that have come to the floor. And with the permission of Madam SG, I would have enjoyed to re-invite our chief guest to make any observations that she may have had up to this point. It seems we are off to an early close. So as we prepare for that closure, I think it's good to just share back some of the minutes with our leadership so that we can hear things that may have come up from this conversation. Over to you, Madam SG.
Thank you very much, Facilitator. Thank you very much, Dr. Greenberg, as always. Our participants, thank you very much for participating in this session. And let me just underscore what I said this morning when I delivered the remarks to this audience. And this was deliberate because we also recognize that while you're operational, you do have an active advisory role, which cannot be undermined. And therefore, this includes intelligence or lessons that feed into the policymaking process. I did outline that your experience, including revenue administration, your experience in dealing with issues of money laundering is critical in reconciling the framework around fiduciary arrangements that each of our member states is seized with, and therefore the broader harmonization agenda on issues of the public financial management framework. I also underscored the fact that the world is moving away from seeing revenue authorities as merely collectors in the process, that please perceive yourselves as guardians of the state coffers. And that is why, although the model law is broad, it does realize the huge portfolios that you carry. It does recognize the tasks which have significant inroads or linkages into the PFM framework. And it is for this reason that we felt consulting you, engaging in this process will assist us in strengthening the certain components of the public financial model law. Your eyes as witnesses, your work and tasks where you see the inflows of money laundering places you in a very critical position to respond and make input into the PFM framework. And therefore, we still believe that at the end of this session, as you consult, you'll be able to give us written comments that will be substantive and actually very relevant, and which will form a huge contribution to the PFM model law. So I would not want us to leave this meeting feeling as though the revenue authorities have no contribution, have no say, and therefore, please, let's count ourselves as valued players in this regard. Let us, of course, give us customized input, which is relevant to your countries. If the model law already meets your benchmark, thank you, and let us share with others so that we may all endeavor to harmonize as part of our regional integration agenda. I thank you, Madam Chair and Dr. Greenberg. I believe that your input is equally valuable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam SG, for this wonderful, summary and re-emphasis on the value that this process places on the revenue authorities, and that this active advisory role is something that continues to live even as this model law takes shape into the future. Well, we really thank you. We seem to be at time. It is now 12:30. I think we are really at time. I will just do one more check to see if there's any other burning comment. Otherwise, I would like to really appreciate all the distinguished members, everybody who was able to participate, to make input, and a very big a lot of appreciation going to the Secretariat team to make sure, who have made sure that we have convened and had all this great conversation. So before I hand over back to Madam SG for the official closure, I can see there is a burning comment from Zimbabwe. Madam Janet, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Facilitator. My question would be, can we, because we didn't go into, throughout the presentation, we're just presenting like from a helicopter position with regards to the comments that we might have on the model law. Is the expectation that we would then, because this is what we had done, is the expectation that we would then go clause by clause and state our position with regards to what has been presented? And hello, sorry, I don't know if you can still hear me.
Madam. Yeah, please proceed. You are muted for a second. Please proceed. Please repeat and proceed. Thank you.
Okay, I was saying when we went through the documents that were furnished to us, we obviously raised questions with regards to some clauses and representations and presentations and provisions therein. And is the expectation that we can still then give you those comments, proposals, revisions, reviews that, and probably even clarifications that we may want on specific clauses, which we haven't done in this meeting? Is that the expectation, so that we know with regards to the way forward? I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Janet. Definitely it would be ideal if you have the opportunity to do the clause by clause feedback, but of course, it is always also helpful to highlight, key issues that you may have observed, even at a higher level, if that is easier. But what is sure is that the SADC Parliamentary Forum Secretariat has been very welcoming to all comments that come in, and we encourage you. So in as much as you wish to go clause by clause, you could focus on the ones that you consider highest of your priorities to respond to or to make comments towards, so that we don't overhaul the load of work that has gone already, but rather pay attention to key issues that are of great concern. This would be my encouragement, but of course, it will be important to also get the final position from Madam SG. And I would like to take this opportunity to really hand back to Madam SG so that she can make her closing remarks and also emphasize on the mode of response that is most encouraged. For our legal drafter, I'll probably, sorry if I jump protocol, but you know, Dr. Greenberg, if there's anything you would like to say before I do the final handover to the SG, I really welcome you to do this. Any comment?
No, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So over to you, Madam SG, so that you can also officially wrap the session for us. I thank you.
Thank you very much. You're giving me too much airtime, moderator. Allow me at this point just to, you know, indicate our appreciation for this particular session. I believe that it has gone quite well. It's also important for us to reach out to as many stakeholders and begin to test the efficacy of the model law eventually. As indicated earlier, all of us, all stakeholders, will be critical in assisting us with the domestication in terms of looking at where they are and how well the PFM system is responded to. There was a question earlier as to whether or not other stakeholders have been actually consulted. Allow me to share with you the calendar of stakeholders that we will be able to consult. And it may not be everybody, but we have tried to put together as best as we can a few sectors that we'll consult. On the 8th of February, we actually met with the Auditors General of SADC member states. On the 15th of February, we met with ministries responsible for finance, economic development, good governance, and institutional reforms, planning commissions, and accounts general of SADC member states. On the 17th of February, we met with chairpersons of relevant standing committees of Parliament, including public accounts, finance, budget, and anti-corruption and good governance committees. Today, on the 22nd of February, we met with yourselves as revenue authorities of SADC member states. On the 24th of February, we'll be meeting with the Attorneys General of SADC member states. On the 1st of March, we will meet with financial intelligence units and anti-money laundering agencies, lawyers and enforcement officers of our SADC member states. On the 3rd of March, we'll meet with police representatives involved in investigating financial crimes and related offenses. On the 9th of March, we'll meet with prosecutors involved in prosecuting financial crimes and related offenses. On the 10th of March, we'll meet with civil society organizations involved in advocacy for good governance. On the 15th of March, we'll meet with chief justices, magistrates, and other judicial officers serving on financial tribunals. On the 16th of March, we'll meet with staff of parliaments, including staff of parliamentary budget offices, legal drafters, and state law officers. On the 17th of March, we're going to meet with financial lawyers invited through the SADC Lawyers Association. And then on the 22nd of March, we'll meet with committees of central bank governors of SADC member states. On the 31st of March, we'll meet with UN agencies, donors, IMF, World Bank, and other regional and interparliamentary bodies responsible or working on issues of PFM. On the 5th of April, we'll meet with various academia institutions. On the 28th of April, which is our last consultation session, we'll meet with the regional standing committees of the SADC Parliamentary Forum and the Women's Caucus to actually validate your comments, to actually look at the final draft of the model law before it goes for adoption to the SADC Parliamentary Forum policy organs in June, which will be held in Malawi. So, honorable colleagues and distinguished participants, this is our roadmap towards this consultation. Should you feel pressed, and we've done that as part of the development of the various model laws, that we have left out a certain grouping, or that you require further input as you do your internal consultations, like South Africa has indicated, feel free to write to us at pfm@sadcpf.org or communicate through the email that you've been receiving documents, and we will consider your request accordingly. I thank you, and I believe that this has been a good consultation. It's a lesson for all of us, and we believe that we'll await your comments, which would improve on the PFM model law thus far. I thank you, Madam Facilitator.
Very much, and with that, we bring the meeting to a close at 40 minutes past noon, and wishing you a very good afternoon. You can log off now. Thank you.
Admin, kindly terminate the session.